Hey everyone, this has been a long time coming. I'm going to be reviewing the entire debate between Hamza Tzortzis and Mohammed Hijab when they went to South Africa. They debated two actual academics on the topic of is Islam or atheism more rational? Now, I'm not going to be doing this in order. I'm going to be doing different segments and they're not going to be chronological. I'm more going for theme because it's quite a long debate. So this first part starts at the end of all four of their opening statements when they're having a dialogue and they're talking about ethics and a couple of other bits and pieces come up. I'll fill you in with the details as we go along about what's been said before to give you some context if you haven't actually watched this debate. So let's jump straight in.
And I just want to say that when you're talking about morality, and you're talking about Sharia law and all these kind of things, you mentioned something quite interesting. You said, our ordinary requirements for moral philosophy. You mentioned as well, like you've got deontological ethics, you've got consequentialism or teleological ethics, and then you've got virtue ethics.
Yes.
You pick up a book on ethics, like, for example, John Mackey, you're going to find this kind of classification.
Now, just give you some context to what Mohammed Hijab is referring to here. In the opening statements, Mark Oppenheimer, which is one of the South African atheist guys, he was talking about various ethical issues, and he brought up number one on the secular side, because he was advocating for secular ethics. He brought up various examples of how you could come up with a rational basis for your morality using secular ethics, and he gave some examples of that, which is the nature of the debate. Now, Mohammed Hijab tries to use this opportunity to turn it into a racial issue. Now, when I first started, when I first watched this some months ago, when they did this debate, I put up a short, which was kind of some of the clips of kind of the pointlessly racializing of this issue from Mohammed Hijab. And I got accused of basically like sort of almost quote mining him, because I tried to squeeze it into a 1 minute short. So obviously I couldn't play the entire thing. So I just took the actual segments, but they were trying to say I'd like misrepresented what he was saying. One of the reasons I'm doing this section first is to cover that, because Mohammed Hijab is exactly doing that. He knows where he is. He's in South Africa, which obviously has a troubled racial history of apartheid. And so he's trying to interject these completely fucking irrelevant things into the conversation about race to try and throw him off. And he's also doing, he loves to do this whole Western white man imperialism thing, which has got nothing to do with the philosophical conversation. So I want to highlight this and show just why he's so dishonest.
This is a Western classification. You mentioned two men, which are Immanuel Kant and John Rawls, both of which, in a sense, represent the white liberal tradition, both white men from the Western Hemisphere.
Right. See, that's absolute bullshit to start with. They represent an aspect of the Western philosophical canon, but they don't represent it as a whole. There's an entire range. I mean, every region of the world has a multitude of different philosophical, religious traditions and everything else, and ethical traditions. So to sort of say, oh, well, you've just picked two white guys and they just represent some typical liberal values or whatever. No, the reason that Mark Oppenheimer has chosen these examples is they give clear rationality to the idea that secular ethics can get you a decent moral system, and there are no problems with it being irrational. And I'll go into some details of that in a minute. But Mohammed Hijab insists, well, because you pick two white guys suddenly, this is some sort of neo-colonialism, imperialism, you'll try to force your morality on us kind of thing. No, you're talking about this, you're comparing different ethical systems. Of course he's going to bring them up. I mean, do you expect him to bring up Islamic scholars to talk about fucking secular ethics? So, I mean, these claims are just so stupid. But anyway, let's get into it a bit more.
My question is, why should it be that white men dictate to us what morality is?
Right, that framing is just stupid. That's not what he's doing. He's bringing up examples of secular ethics. And another point is, they can be applied universally. That's why he's bringing them up.
We had enough of this in this country, in a sense that, this is now, to be honest with you, in a veiled sense. If you set our requirements for morality as if we all subscribe to it, we have a completely different understanding and a completely different ontology. Why have you assumed that the white man is right? What proof that you have that is Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative?
See, again, keep bringing up the person's race is completely irrelevant. I mean, if he happened to be a Westerner who wasn't white, would that make his argument any more or any less convincing? So again, this pointless racialization, and he knows the audience because it's South Africa. He knows these are kind of like touchy issues that he can basically bait people with. And as you can see, well, I'm hoping you can make out. I mean, a lot of the audience is filled with kind of Muslims, basically, and I'm assuming they're going to be all Salafi, morons like Mohammed Hijab and Hamza Tzortzis. So they're going to be like the real hardline extremists. So again, he's playing to that audience too, but he's picking up these issues of race as if they've got any relevance. They fucking haven't.
Or San Francisco imperative, or John Rawls' veil of ignorance, where you kept mentioning, any of that stuff is true. And what proof do you have that it's objectively true as an atheist? If we can get through this question.
Well, again, the idea is that's not the point of the debate, to say this is objectively true. I mean, they've got this obsession because they think that they've got objective morality from the Quran and from Islam, which obviously isn't objective. They therefore insist on throwing this word in, but it's got nothing to do with it. The point is, you're comparing ethical systems and saying which one is more rational. So it doesn't need to necessarily say, oh, this is objectively true. He may not even believe in objective morality. The point is it rational? That's the point of the debate. And the reason why he mentions the particular examples that Mark has brought up in his opener, and obviously we'll go into this in more detail when I do those other parts of the discussion. The reason he's brought up in, like, take Rawls' veil of ignorance, which is one of the examples he brings up. For those who don't know, that's essentially it's a thought experiment where you basically set up the rules for the society you're about to go in, but you don't know who you're going to be. So you don't know what religious background you'll have if you're there, or if you'll have one at all. You don't know your economic background. You don't know your racial background, your gender, your sexuality, any of those things. And it's a way of showing that, look, given that veil of ignorance where you don't know where you're going to be, it's likely that you're going to try and do as fair and a balanced a system in terms of rights and ethics, because you could end up being at the bottom of the pile. And if you want, if you're going to follow a supremacist system like under Sharia, then you've got every chance of falling into the category that's going to get executed, or going to be oppressed, or going to be a dhimmi or something like that. So therefore, you can come from the secular point of view to say that, you can get a perfectly rational basis, which is going to be fair, reasonable, have good outcomes in society, and you don't need God behind it. You certainly don't need Islam behind it. So this is why he's bringing them up. It's not like, oh, he just plucked some random white men out because he wants to do racial dominance or something in the argument. These examples lead you to that kind of universalist, beneficial ethical system. And that's what he's bringing them up as an example of secular ethics. And Hijab just can't get past that because he doesn't actually understand the topic that he's discussing.
Then we can talk about Sharia law and the false things that you were saying about it. For example, a woman that's menstruating gets burned or something like that. You get burned by, or if you have sex with a woman that's menstruating, you should not mention in any book of fiqh in Islam whatsoever. And you mentioned the book.
Yeah, I mean, he brought up a little list of, horrible kind of ethical problems within Islam. He might have got that one wrong. I will go into that section later and we'll sort of see what he was referring to. I can't quite remember it at this stage. So he might have made a mistake in that.
So fiqh is not mentioned in any book whatsoever. Then you mentioned Khomeini, who was an obscure figure. So
that throwaway comment, right? The reason he brought up Khomeini was talking about the impact of the fatwa against Salman Rushdie, from what I can remember, which highlights both the imposition of a blasphemy law and the threats to ex-Muslims that Islam represents, which makes it a terrible ethical system. That's what, and yet he's kind of downplayed out, oh, Khomeini, he was just some obscure figure. So why were millions of Muslims around the world since 1989 calling for his death? Why is only 18 months ago Salman Rushdie was still had an assassination attempt against him? So this brushing it off as, oh, Khomeini, he was just an obscure figure. Well, he certainly had a fucking impact, didn't he? And that's the point.
Question is, as an atheist, you have the audacity to say our requirements of moral philosophy, as if the white man's moral philosophy is all of our moral philosophies.
That's not what he's saying. The point is that you're going to come from some kind of basic point with ethics, whether you're a Muslim, a Christian, an atheist, a Hindu, whatever. Whether you're from a conservative, liberal background, however you want to sort of cash that out. The point is that you're going to still be looking at the same ethical concerns. What do you think about murder? What do you think about stealing? What do you think about it could be issues like abortion. What do you think of, it's a whole range of kind of like basic human experience issues, which essentially are universal. And how do you tackle it? So he's not saying like, oh, you have to follow my morality. He's saying that the same range of ethical concerns are going to come up regardless of your background. And the point is, how do you deal with it? He's acting as if you're trying to force the white man's morality on it. Again, he doesn't understand the fucking thing that they're debating. It's ridiculous.
No, we have divine command theory, we have Quran, we have Sunnah, we have our own way of deriving morals.
Yeah, and just to say, yeah, you have divine command theory. Do you think that Muslims came up with that? That's been around as long as people have believed in God, for fuck's sake. You're going to claim that as some kind of what? Middle Eastern, Arab morality, source of morality or something. I mean, that is as old as theism is. So it's a completely stupid claim. But it also in there, if you're saying, oh, well, you know, you don't want the white man's ethics, that's just subjective. Well, you could just say the same thing. Well, the Quran, the Sunnah, etc. Well, that's just some Arab random subjective morality that you're throwing out. So why should anyone else listen to it? I mean, we can both play that game. At least they're trying to give something which could be applied as a universal, fair and rational standard of ethics. You're not doing that. You're openly supremacist with your beliefs.
What objective proof do you two have that the deontological ethics of Immanuel Kant and or the veil of ignorance of John Rawls, who is a liberal, both of them are liberal in a sense, and or any of the consequentialist ethics or any of the utilitarian thinkers of the modern day is objectively true?
Again, that's not the point. It's not about being objectively true. It's about rational. Can you derive a rational basis for your ethical system? He doesn't even understand the question of the debate.
So first of all, I think you play a very dangerous game when you attach secular ethics to race and you rob people who are of many races of their human rights. Like when you say that it's a white man's game to talk about rights. No, to try and abolish suffering.
No, I didn't say it's a white man's race. It's a white man's game to talk about rights. I said that what you've mentioned is a Western form of ethics. Is the ones who, the knowledge producers, were objectively white men, objectively from the liberal tradition in Europe.
You'll know about the
Yeah, so you are just basically saying that. I mean, you say, no, I'm not saying that. But then you're saying, well, yeah, I am, because I'm saying that it's the white man's version of ethics or whatever. No, the point is, yes, it came out of the European tradition. But the point is, it's an attempt at universalism. I mean, the Quran would also make that claim, or you would make that claim on behalf of the Quran, that this is like a message for all mankind. Are we just going to dismiss it because it came from some Arabs? I mean, that is basically your argument. So you are racializing it. You are essentially saying that you can dismiss his claims because it comes from a white guy.
That's a fallacy.
I'm not saying it's false. I'm asking you why it's true.
Yes. So let's first.
Yeah, but you're not just doing that, are you? You keep bringing up the race. You keep saying white man this, white man that. So that you are doing that. You're such a fucking liar.
First, I want to deal with this question of him saying we can assess the content of the ideas by looking at the race and the sex of the speakers.
You said our moral philosophy. You've included me in your morality. I'm asking you to prove your morality before you say our moral. I don't subscribe to your morality.
Yeah, we know that. When he's saying our morality, again, he's more talking about just the basic ethical concerns that everyone's got to face and come up with ways to build some kind of civilized system of. He's not saying you have to agree with him or I'm imposing the white man's morality. He's saying, look, here is a secular ethics, which I'm saying is rational, and let's compare it to yours. Mohammed Hijab's response is, how dare you push that on me? Well, don't go into a fucking debate with someone on atheism and Islam if you're going to be offended by someone bringing up something that came up from a European. I mean, what a clown.
Answer me, why is the veil of ignorance of John Rawls or the consequentialist moralities of any of the liberal thinkers or the veil of ignorance or the deontological ethics of Kant? It's true.
I'll get to it. You're going to have to stop interrupting me. Okay.
And
so
first, to add to
yeah, exactly. But I mean, if you didn't do all this interrupting, etc., yes, he probably could have explained it by now. And now Hamza Tzortzis is going to jump in to throw some more asinine crap on the fire.
Answers your discourse. You also mentioned rights.
Yes.
If you don't mind, I'm assuming you're advocating a liberal conception of rights, like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Well, do you advocate the UN Charter?
The claim that I've made is that there are three different ways in which an atheist can construct morality.
I understood that. I just want to know specific, because you mentioned rights twice.
Yeah.
And it's very important to
the ontological account can get you rights, and the consequentialist account can also get you rights.
Yes, but from the perspective of law, of legal and moral reasoning, and what your views are, so I understand how to deal with you and your beliefs in a positive way.
Yeah, bullshit in a positive way. I mean, this is completely irrelevant The point of the debate is not to talk about individual conceptions of liberal, conservative, or whatever like that. The point of the debate is how do you come up with the rational system? It's the mechanism, it's the epistemology that you're going for here. Arguing over little individual bits of human rights isn't the point of the debate.
What conception of rights do you advocate? Is it the conception of rights that is known as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights?
So first of all, I haven't expressed the personal view about ethics, and I don't intend on doing.
Okay.
Yeah, and nor should he, because that's not really the point of the debate.
You mentioned rights twice.
you just say, very nice, but just
Yeah, let's just
the reason I'm saying is rights are related to morality.
you've asking a number of questions. Can you just for the sake of discussion?
I promise not to interrupt you.
Give him at least
I just wanted to
a minute.
I do apologize. I just wanted to add to that because that's going to be a follow-up question. So if you think about that, just let us know.
Yeah, I mean, what a patronising clown. Oh, you think about that, let us know. They've just said, can you stop interrupting us? He just continues to do it. He just interrupts, and now he's going to throw something else on there. Again, yeah, this is the dawah clown show on full show now.
Yeah.
Because what I wanted to say was that has a liberal individualist assumption, which many people don't have.
Again, what does this even mean? I mean, again, when he says liberal, it just means anything that's not his Salafi version of Islam. But it's a funny other word that he used there, individualist. Like, aren't the rights in Islam for individual Muslims? Or you're trying to claim, individual rights. That's kind of the whole point, isn't it? I mean, collective rights mean nothing if the individuals can't actually enjoy them. So again, he's throwing in words that are completely irrelevant and not even appropriate.
To agree, and that's why when you come to the table with these universals, it does come across in some way that there's a sign of maybe superiority complex. And I don't mean it in a negative way. I'm just
I mean, that is just so ironic, and I'll get to that in a second.
trying to psychoanalyze certain statements in a positive way so we know, and you can stand in the possibility that in actual fact that you may think you're already right. And I want you to stand in the possibility that you might be wrong. And if that's the case, then maybe define your terms a bit more clearer, especially when you're mentioning things like rights. Because
right, I'm just going to stop him there because he talks about, I just want to make sure that you'll come in here thinking that you might be wrong. These two clowns, I think they went on to what's his name, Hakikachu's channel after this debate and did a long debrief, and which I watched, and during it, they basically said, and it was particularly Hamza sources, I remember saying this, that when we go to debate with atheists, we shouldn't see them as equal to us. We should see them as inferior. They've got an inferior system. We're not going there to have a debate, to have our mind change. We know we're right. We know they're wrong. And we're basically just showing that to the world. So what a fucking hypocrite to say that to them when he's come there with the explicit, expressed intention to be closed-minded, to look down on the people as basically inferior to him. Now, we all know that these Salafis have that view of non-Muslims in general. But, I mean, he expressed that. But then to sit there and act as if, like, I'm so humble, you should really try and make sure that you'll come from this position where you might be wrong. And well, obviously, these two academics are honest debaters. They do real debates, so they are coming from that perspective. But for you to throw that in their face, I mean, seriously, just Hamza is unbelievable.
rights is a big term, but it has ideological constructs. That's my point.
All right, so I'm now
That's
going to
it.
speak without interruption.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to try and answer your questions as
Please,
best as I can.
please.
You're still interrupting me.
I said please.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, shut up, Hamza.
all right, so let's first of all talk about the different moral frameworks that you can have. I haven't picked a lane for myself, and I don't intend on doing so. The claim that I have made is that an atheist is entitled to claim that there are moral facts, that they don't have to buy the nihilism. You've set up a false dilemma, which is to say that either morality is grounded in God, or there is no such thing as morality, that the atheist is required to say that they're just whizzing atoms and they cannot have any normative force. And what I've pointed out is that there are very good secular claims to why there is morality, either grounded in suffering or grounded in human reason, which can generate rights. And by the way, those rights can be spoken about either in legal instruments, so we can talk about rights that are allocated by the UN, or they can just be talked about in the deontological sense. You don't necessarily have to think that the UN Charter on Human Rights is the definitive account. But I think we think a lot of the rights that are in the Charter are pretty good. Now, you can bite the bullet. You can just say, I don't buy any of it. I don't believe in rights. I don't think there's a problem with suffering. I don't like any of the rules that rules generates. And you can just bite bullets and you can say, there is nothing wrong with putting homosexuals to death. That's just your white liberal Western conception of things. And then we're going to have to agree to disagree on it. The point is that you have to bite a very repugnant bullet. That when you deny the major moral theories, that the consensus is going to be against you. Now, it has nothing to do with your race or your sex. While I was trying to explain this, that there's a huge danger in claiming that the liberal tradition or that the moral philosophies that have emanated from John Stuart Mill, John Rawls, or Immanuel Kant belong to white people, or because they emanate from white people, there's something wrong with them. First of all, many people around the world benefit from the notion of human rights. The idea that as an individual, you have a claim against someone else not to do certain things to you. That because you have a right to dignity, it is wrong for someone to intentionally torture you against your will, to put you into a status of slavery. I mean, one of the examples that I gave where I said any person who thinks that morality is external and a good thing would think that slavery is abhorrent. Now, the Quran mentions slavery on many occasions. It does not.
Before we get to that, you've spoken for 2 minutes. Can we respond to one thing at a time?
Yeah, and I wanted to let that run because Mark Oppenheimer, the guy who was just talking, I think he expressed that excellently in that, these values, whether they emanate from Western people, white people, whatever, a couple of hundred years ago or earlier, the point is that there's a rational basis for a universal application. And I think you can demonstrate that because despite where they come from, they're not advocating for any special position for you based on your religious belief or based on your gender or based on your sexuality or anything like that. So therefore, they do have a universal characteristic. Now, Islam doesn't do that. Islam does say we will have an apartheid system. We will have supremacism under Sharia. Muslim Sunni males, since they are the most populous of the Muslim population, they will be at the top tier. Women will be an oppressed underclass with less rights. People of the book will have dhimmi status, and everybody else has potential expulsion or death. Now, that's a fact. And then you can also throw in things like apostates will be killed, and people who are openly gay will be killed, and anyone who desecrates the Quran will be killed, and anyone who blasphemes or is seen to blaspheme will be killed, on and on and on it goes. But the point is, that's not a universalist system in terms of everyone having the same rights. And the point is, he's arguing that, yes, look, there's a rational basis to say we can come up with a fair, ethical, rational system here. Islam can't. And I think he describes that beautifully. It's got nothing to do with your race. It's got nothing to do with your gender. These rights can, and, in parts of history have been applied well to help people regardless of their background. So Mohammed Hijab has tried to provoke this racial element in this debate. He thinks he's fucking clever because he's surrounded by his cultists in the audience. But Mark has demonstrated here exactly why he's wrong. And I thought it was brilliant.
Because otherwise you're just going to...
Let him finish that.
Let me finish that point.
Go ahead.
If the Quran mentions slavery, and we'd expect a divine being that either issues good commands or is aware of what is good, to not just have regulation about slavery, but to outright condemn it, to say that no matter the society that you're in, regardless of the place or the time, slavery is always wrong. And we just don't see that in the Quran.
Okay.
That seems like a failure.
That's responding.
Yeah, exactly. It is a failure. And the fact that you've got to defend it shows a major weakness because, again, Mark also mentioned, the consensus will be against you. And that's true because 80% of the world are not Muslim. And to be fair, a good chunk of the Muslim population are not going to want to go along with your conception of it, your application of Sharia and all the rest of it. So you are in the minority with your view. And that's not down to race or anything. It's down to you've got a shit ideology, basically.
You've completely miscategorized what he said. You've strawmanned actually what he said, which is very surprising considering your level of qualification and education.
No, he didn't straw man. I mean, he's referring back to the opening statements that they did. So I'm not going to go into that too much here. I'll do that in another section.
I'm actually surprised that he didn't say we don't believe in rights and suffering. He said we don't believe that you can't prove it objectively. Underline the word objectively.
Yeah, underlying the word objectively, you're going back to something which is not part of the debate. Nowhere does it say, is atheism objectively true? So this is just nonsense.
As an atheist, there is no mechanism through which you can prove deontological ethics or consequentialist ethics on an objective framework, which is why John Stuart Mill tried to prove the desirability principle in his book on utilitarianism. What I'm saying is that this is the first thing you're going to have to choose. The second thing is,
No, it's just completely irrelevant. He tried to do a red herring with the whole racial bullshit. Now he's trying to do it with this objective truth thing because he's not actually going to engage him on what he said. He's got to duck and dodge.
We talk about race and you talk about slavery. Let me tell you something the Prophet Muhammad said. Okay, the Prophet said there's no virtue over a black man over a white man or an Arab over a non-Arab. How comes it took you, I don't know how many years as the white dominance to figure that out? Only 30 years ago you stopped apartheid.
Again, he's bringing up apartheid. I mean, it's so pathetic. I mean, he thinks this is clever, right? Look at Islam's record on race relations. I mean, East African slave trade under the Ottomans and the Arabs and everybody else, every other Muslim who took a chunk out of East Africa. You know, millions and millions of people enslaved over 1,000 years. And he's going to lecture him about apartheid. Again, neither is actually particularly relevant. I mean, slavery as a general moral issue is relevant. But start, you know, doing historical blame stupid. But if you're going to play that game and say like, oh, because you can quote one hadith from Muhammad, which is, you know, it's not a bad hadith, but there's plenty of other stuff that Muhammad said that was racist. So, you know, it's not as clear cut as Muhammad is trying to make here. But yeah, you think that's really anything to do with the argument now? You're just playing this game of like, oh, we came up with like, you know, equality for the races before you did. So that somehow shows that Islam is true. Such a bad argument.
So why should we listen to you? In a sense, you're playing the moral superiority card. With all due respect,
he's not playing a moral superiority card. He's describing secular ethics and how it has a rational basis and how you can come to rational, decent moral positions on the things that we would all face as a human species. You can't do that. So you're just doing these straw man fucking attacks.
With all due respect, it took you 1,300 years after the fact to realize that something the Prophet said, Prophet Muhammad, who you're attacking the religion of right now, 1,300 years before.
He wasn't attacking Muhammad in there. Again, he's just such a, you know, let's play the victim card. While you're doing a straw man argument, let me just throw in a little victim thing. Oh, you're attacking Prophet Muhammad. Again, if you're too childish to come to the debate without playing this victim card, don't fucking show up. And on top of that, you know, you're going to go on about, oh, you know, racism and, you know, history of racial abuse and stuff like that in the Western world. Yeah, of course it's there. Let's have a look at what the situation is like in the Muslim world. If you really want to play this game. I mean, if your ethics are so good, why did it take the non-Muslim world forcing you to not do slavery? Because without that intervention, slavery would still be endemic in every part of the Muslim world. I have no doubt about that. It was outside pressure. So if your morality system's so good, why that?
You now agree with him. So how do we know you're not going to differ on these issues? Number two, on the issue of slavery, okay, because, you know, when was the apartheid in 1994, 30 years ago, and they're telling us about this and that. I mean, I don't.
Oh yeah, apartheid is the same as slavery. And by the way, I'm not trying to, you know, downplay the you know, the horrors of apartheid and stuff in South Africa. But yeah, I would say that the East African slave trade was just a little bit worse in terms of its consequences for African people, as was obviously the Western, you know, West African transatlantic slave trade too. So I'm not absolving the West, but it's like you're sitting there as if like you bring, you know, you bring up slavery as a basic moral issue, and I'll just throw in apartheid and say, oh, I win. I mean, how fucking childish is this?
How this is working here. Number two, you said this, the emanation and the knowledge production of these ideologies that you're talking about is undoubtedly white and European. You cannot take that away from the reality.
Again, so he's just going back to the same stupid argument. This has already been shown to be irrelevant. Any rational person who is coming to a philosophy debate should know that this is irrelevant, but he's got nothing else, so he has to keep going back to this.
I don't think John Stuart Mill or Jeremy Bentham or Immanuel Kant was Nigerian.
So fucking what?
I didn't think. You're talking about secular ethics. It's not the...
See, look, he's getting laughs from, you know, these idiots in the crowd there. They think that's a good point. And this is why this shows there is no philosophical understanding for these hardline Salafis. As far as I'm concerned, they're all there to see his clown show because they don't even understand what's being said.
Secular ethics of the black man, is it? It's the secular ethics of the white man. And you've already assumed.
The point of secular ethics is that it transcends that kind of thing. You're trying to come up with universal principles. It shouldn't be based on race. What are you saying? Oh, we have to have a black version of secular ethics and an Asian version of secular ethics and a Arab version of secular ethics. No, the point about secular ethics is you're trying to transcend all that tribalism. That's why, if you can implement it, it's going to be a better system.
it to be true, just like many of probably the people before in this country, white men assumed that apartheid was true. Then they had to.
What do you mean assume that apartheid was true? I think it might have meant you assumed that apartheid was morally correct or something. But again, so what? What has this got to do with anything? You're not actually talking about the ethical principles that he's put up in terms of the secular ethical examples. You're not addressing that. You're just going to, oh, you know, apartheid, oh, there's racism in the West or whatever. How is this an argument?
Suffering, by the way, that Mandela and others had to undergo, the suffering that, which is good suffering, by the way, because not all suffering is bad. You said suffering is bad. What about the suffering that Mandela and the others, the anti-apartheid activists, had to go through? Was that good suffering or bad suffering? It was good suffering, because then people realized that it's...
Right, that was an idiotic statement as well, because, I mean, again, this refers back to stuff that he said in their opening statement, so, I mean, I'll cover this in more detail another time, but, yeah, I'll just leave it there.
You know, it's equality and race and things like that. So this is what you're doing here, is you're being morally sanctimonious.
No, he's not. He's really not. He's just putting out an ethical system which he thinks it doesn't need any kind of God backing to it, and you get a reasonable, ethical, rational system that comes out of it. That's all he's doing. And you are playing, you know, you're on the defense because you can't do that. Because as we all know, you don't care about actual equality, any principles that most of the people in the rest of the world do actually appreciate. You want the supremacist system. You want the totalitarian, authoritarian apartheid system. You just want Islam to be running it. So again, that's another irony, keeping up apartheid, where you are essentially pro-religious apartheid.
You're clearly trying to come with the hierarchies. You explain to me. No, you explain to me why your morality is true in the first place. I believe, yes, homosexuality is prohibited in Islam. It's wrong. Yes, I believe you're going to go to the hellfire if you don't believe.
Yeah, you believe a lot more than that. You believe that they should be killed if they're openly homosexual.
Believe in Allah. Yes, I believe that there's heaven. Yes, I believe in the day of judgment. These are things I believe in. Tell me why that's wrong. Tell me why that makes Islam to be true.
Yeah, well, because you've got no evidence for a start, but that's not the point of the fucking debate, is it? Again, he's just going off on a rant now, just trying to chew up the clock, because you know he's got no real argument. And again, just look at these clowns smiling in the background, or at least that one just behind Mohammed's head. It just shows they got no idea.
True. What creedal disproving implications does that have? As a philosopher, where is your objective morality? Where is your objective?
Again, he's just on repeat now, going back to objective morality. It's not the point of the debate.
Reasoning? Where are the arguments? Where is the empiricism? Where is the calculation? Where is the proof? Where is the evidence? That's why I'm asking. Don't assume, because the dominance remains in the Western Hemisphere, and there's hegemony on the side of the Western Hemisphere. That whatever ideology they decide to put down, we're going to assume is going to be true. That you're going to.
Okay, he's just repeat. I mean, look, obviously, I've already explained how this is just absolutely stupid what he's saying here in enough detail. So I'll let him rant on, and we'll get to the end of this.
Come here and tell us our requirements for moral requirements. That's your moral requirements. You have a religion, I have a different religion. Prove to me that your religion is true.
He's an atheist, you fucking idiot.
That's what I'm saying. Why is consequentialism true? Why is deontological ethics true? Why don't you come and start with that?
So before Mark responds, I just want to make a meta comment about the style of communication. I'm saying very uncomfortable. Yeah. I'm very uncomfortable with how this has very quickly degenerated into a shouting match. I understood, and I was led to believe by the organizers of this event, that we were going to be here to discuss, in a mature and reflective way, various worldviews. I'm very disheartened by the turn that this is already taken. So I want that noted for everybody to see, because
yeah, and this is a sad thing, because these two guys are proper academics. They, as I said, they both work in, they're both advocates, I think, for the Johannesburg bar. So they're legal advocates, and but they both got a background in philosophy. I think they both got degrees in philosophy as well, and so they are proper academic people. The atheists here are for an actual academic debate. Hamza and Hijab, they are here for a thug debate, basically. So it's academia v thugademia. This is what it is, because they don't actually understand the topics. This is just all dawah session. They got no respect for actually having a reasonable debate here, and it is kind of disheartening to see people who've given up their time, who think that this is actually serious, to then be exposed to this kind of stupidity, which anybody who knows these clowns, we knew this was going to happen. But it just shows the innocence of these guys, and I think it's a shame because you should respect the institution you're coming into. You were coming into an established, one of the top universities in South Africa to speak to real academics, and all you do is this fucking clown show. And if you think this is bad, I mean, the stupid performance is going to get worse in the last part of this video before we wrap up. Just Mohammed Hijab just going full clown thuggery.
Because then we have more opinion as philosophers, as intellectuals. And for the last 5 minutes, Mark, who is an absolute gentleman, has been shouted at. Now,
This is not relevant, to be honest with you.
Right,
We're talking about God and morality. You've spoken about 10 minutes about why Islam.
and again,
Yes, can you get to the point, please?
and again.
I mean, again, he's just so rude. I mean, he does not deserve to sit in these kinds of institutions. He does not deserve to speak to these people. Because and again, it's not because they haven't actually got any degrees, which they haven't. I mean, Hijab and them, they'll always go on about, oh yeah, I've got 500 degrees. Yeah, show us some receipts on that, and not something from Zakir Naik University or something. But the point is, if you're going to debate real academics, show some respect for what a real debate is. But they're not there to do that. They're there just to act like idiots.
Point is, I'm making
Get to the point.
I'm making a method point.
Yeah, but it's not really. It's not.
Okay, so I'm gonna have you stepping. So let me just reset. Let's reset things. Okay.
So I want to reset things, and I want to talk about something.
Can I say one thing
that came up?
I will let you. I promise I'll let you. So we did say that this is a discussion, and we all came here wanting to discuss things, and I understand that things are heated. I should say that I enjoyed all 4 presentations. I was impressed with the level of philosophy in all 4 presentations.
Yeah, all 3, because Mohammed Hijab's got no philosophy in it at all. We'll get to that. It's basically him just standing up, playing with himself in public. I mean, it's pathetic. And Hamza's is not much better, to be honest.
Right. And I'd like us, as best as we can, even though these things are heated for all of us, to try to do what we did in the discussion. Try to argue the point, even if we do not like many
I don't
things
want anyone
about
to
it.
tell me how to speak. With all due respect, I'm free in this country. I can speak with an assertive voice. I don't need people telling me how to speak.
See, listen to Hijab now. I can speak how I want to speak. I mean, he's like a kid in detention who's protesting. He's got to follow the rules like everyone else, or act with some kind of good conduct. He now starts clowning, showing his ass.
I'm not being told that I cannot speak in an assertive voice. The discussion doesn't dispute that. What
It's not an assertive voice. It's a deliberately aggressive, pointless distraction kind of voice.
due respect, I don't want to be told off. This is a 5-minute segment. And
I'm not telling you off.
No, he was for 2 minutes. That is a run.
He wasn't telling you off. He was explaining the secular ethical position. That's what he was doing. He considers that being told off.
Away tactic. He knows that he's got nothing to say about something like that.
I mean, the irony of that statement when he's just spent the last fucking 5-10 minutes or whatever just talking absolute nonsense and just repeating himself over and over. And he's getting a round of applause from these idiots at the back.
We're talking about Prophet Muhammad and homosexuality and attacking Islam. I'm telling you, respond to my arguments. Don't try to tell me off like a little boy. Trust me, I'm not a little boy.
You are a little boy. You've got the mentality of a 13-year-old and, the body of basically someone who, because you're a big guy, you can just throw your weight around that like a thug. And that's a dangerous combination.
In every single man, I'm a bigger man than others.
Listen to like front. Oh, I'm a bigger man than you. I mean, this is so childish. These are real academics. These are, this is not speaker's corner. Have you got no sense of self-respect? You just gonna act like this.
Why is it that not objectively true? Go on to the question.
You have to write it down. So sorry, sir, we haven't settled this yet. So the issue is not being told what to say or how to say it, right? The issue.
See, Mohammed, just look at his watch there. He doesn't care about this. The moderator is trying to impose some good conduct here. He just looks at his watch like he doesn't give a shit.
The issue is that there's a
structural apartheid, the way you're being dealt with right now.
Structural apartheid, listen to him. Yeah, he's basically saying that you've got to act your age, you've got to be mature, you've got to not be shouting and screaming in the other person's face and doing all your clownery. You've got to have a real conversation. And yet he used that as a pathetic attempt to throw in a stupid joke about apartheid.
The way I want to speak.
So let me say this. Let me put it this way.
I would like to be dealt with properly here.
Let me put it this way.
So just answer my question. I don't want to be.
You want to be dealt with properly, act properly. That's the point.
Talk not to speak. What's your respect?
Listen, I'm speaking to you in a way.
You're being a sanctimonious, and you're trying to be the schoolboy teacher.
No.
You're not here for that.
No.
No, he's the moderator, so he is supposed to be there to try to keep order, you idiot. I mean, it's like this guy's never actually been in debate before. So seriously, he spent too much time at Speaker's Corner where they just scream and shout at each other. He doesn't actually know what a real debate is.
No. I actually...
Why he spent 3 minutes actually not paying the session?
My views are closer to yours. I'm not an atheist.
Oh, it doesn't matter what you
My views are closer to yours. And I recognize the...
Yeah, so he's saying he's not an atheist. Again, Mohammed's trying to play the victim card. Like, oh, you know, you're taking his side. It's like the guy, I mean, I don't know if this guy's a Muslim, but, you know, he says he's not an atheist. So he's, you know, theist of some description. So again, you know, Hijab just trying to play the victim over and over.
The issue...
something to say.
One of the discussions was to say something.
Could we ask, she's sorry, was you the moderator of the show? Can I ask if all of you agree that we can sense that Chad and I, you give us a chance to think over things, and then we'll get back to our four panelists.
Yeah, I think I'm going to end it there, actually. I mean, there was a little bit more I was going to play, but it's basically just them talking about the procedural stuff. I just wanted to include that at the end because it just shows the nature and the tempo of the debate, which Hijab and, to a lesser extent, Hamza, Tzortzis, is trying to impose on it. They don't care about the topic, really. This is just a dawah clown show, which is why they do all the straw man arguments and the Interruption and all the rest of it. And it's just embarrassing. But it just goes to show. Number one, why I wanted to start with this segment was to show those people who said, when I put that short up, oh, you're misrepresenting what Hijab said about, you know, about race or whatever. No, I'm not. I think I went into explicit detail to show that's exactly what he's doing, throwing in every stupid comment about apartheid. He's got nothing to do with this, to try to basically race shame or something, because he can't actually win the argument on any kind of merit. And all he does is duck and dodge and do his little performative act. And I think the two atheist guys acted with real class, and I feel sorry for them because they don't know the kind of people that they're dealing with. But anyways, I hope you all enjoyed this. I'm sorry this has taken me so long to do it. I will have another part up very soon, and as I say, we're going to go through and look at different themes and different parts of it, but I'm hoping to cover the whole thing if people are enjoying these. So I will see you all in the next one.